Okay, so here we are, one more time, Baruch Hashem, in our revisit of the Malacha of Borer. So today I hope to get into some new discussions that we never saw yet. In the we talked about it, but not in depth that we're going to do today. But before we start, on page 300 in volume 18, we're going to go to page 314. On page 314, the summary of the halachot of Borer. So what we saw last week, we saw the Gemara, we saw a Rambam, we saw a Shulchan Aruch, and we came out that so the main thing is when it comes to Borer, it's either Daraita or it's okay. So it's either Daraita Asur or it's going to be okay. There is no Derabbanans when it comes to Borer. So the Gemara told us that there needs to be three conditions to allow for one to select. Right? And the three conditions were you have to do it by hand, you have to do it for immediate use, and you have to take food away from the waste. All right, so that's number one over there in the review. Now, last week we spent time in talking about what was considered immediate use. Okay, so we had that lashon of the Me'iri and other Rishonim that were saying you have the sha'ah, you have the hour, right? And then we showed how that hour wasn't necessarily literal, right? Rav Moshe saw the hour as being the time that you need to prepare the Suda. So sha'ah means the time that's needed. Rav Ribiat took that to mean as much time as needed, right? 3 hours I need for the Suda, I can do it in 3 hours. Whereas the Sephardic poskim saw sha'ah as being a half hour, meaning it's a short period of time prior to the Suda, which is that time is usually a half hour. So they said a half hour. Although the Alka Joseph said you have up to an hour using the literal sha'ah of the Rishonim. So that was really what we saw last week. We had Rav Orbach, we had in number 11, he had an idea there that if you need to do some borer in order to put a certain food into the pot so it can absorb the taste, and you need 3-4 hours to do that, you can do that borer 3-4 hours in advance, going again with that idea that as long as whatever shah is all the time that I need prior to the meal, that would be okay. So again, for Sephardic psak, it's a half hour to an hour before the meal. The other idea that we saw was it has to really be before the meal, which means is that you can't take a break after. I mean, like, oh, I'm going to prepare for the meal. I need a half hour, so I'm preparing, knowing and planning that I'll leave me 10 minutes to put my feet on the couch. That's not considered immediate use, and that would not be allowed. Now, if in the middle of me preparing, I had to stop because my child this, my child that, someone knocked the door, whatever it was, that's fine. That's still considered immediate use. It's where the person decides to go for a stroll or prepares the suda and then says, I'm going to go to shul and did bar beforehand. All that would be usher because that would not be considered immediate. The last issue that we dealt with last week was the issue of what the Ben Ish Chai brings up, which is, can I do bar for guests? Meaning, I want to take out more chickens or whatever I'm breaking out. It's not for immediate use. The guests are not going to use it. I know they're not going to eat it. It's impossible for them to eat it, but I don't want to take out a empty plate or an empty bowl. So can I fill that up? So Ben Ish Chai said, well, guess what? That's still a tzarech. Tzarech for an immediate tzarech, because right now I need a plate to look nice. Okay? That was the Ben Ish Chai, and he wanted to matter it. The Chamuvadia said, no such thing. Nothing doing here. Okay? You're not giving me any proofs. You're saying it from a svara. You're dealing with malacha bar, which is a doraita. I'm not comfortable with taking that approach. And that was Chamavadia who said you cannot do that. You cannot take out more for the guests. You have to take out what is considered understandable for that immediate time of use. Okay, so now we're getting into our sugi for today, and we're on page 300, but we're going to backtrack to page 292 just for a moment. Okay, on page 292, you have on the top, right? This is the Gemara explaining how you do bar. And one of the issues that we said was biyad, right? So Elam Rabbi Yosef, bar v'aychel, you can do bar and eat biyad, right? Bar miniach, you can do bar and put it on the side biyad. Now, if you did it with instruments, right, the kanon ubtamkui, which is like a plate or some other basket, right? A basket and a plate, which you usually don't use to do bar with. It's not a kli bar. It's not a vessel or a utensil that's used to select, but it's still lo yivror. You should not use that for selection. The imbirer, and if you did bar with it, pater avoloser. You're not chayiv adoraita because it's not a keli that's used for you. So it's a shinui, but it's still aser. But if you used actual sieve or a sifter, lo yivror in birer, and if you did chayav chatat, that is the deoraita. That is the chayav chatat. So it's okay. So that is the Gemara that says it very clearly that you can't use any keli to do the malacha bar. When it means biyad, it has to be with the hand. So even a keli that's not a keli that's used for bar is still aser derabanan. It's pater aval aser. Okay, so now the real question comes: what about today when we have what's known as the silverware, right? The silverware, the cutlery, the fork and the spoon. How do we view that? You just told me any keli, you can't do bar with any keli. So how do you view silverware? How do you use fork, spoon, knife? How do you view this? What? So is it a continuation of the hand or not? So there's a Mishnah Brura that seems to be saying it's not a continuation of the hand. Take a look at source number 17. So here we're dealing with the guy who has milk, and he has fat that developed on top of the milk. So this is making the milk in the farms, right? Not the milk you buy at home. But anyway, so at the last in the bold, he gives you an option of how to do it, and he says "Avalika chashumin b'tzumtzum aser." You can't take it with the exact amount. Fil datul achal alter. Sharehu lokeach with what? Bikak, with the spoon. So says the Mishnah Brura, you cannot select the fat in a precise manner, I mean taking off the fat the top of the milk, and you're leaving the milk and you're separating the fat, right? Let's say I want the fat and I want to use it right now. So it's the altar, it's for right now, it's for miyad, right? But he says you can't do it because you're doing it with a spoon. 1 second, you were telling me that a spoon is considered an extension of the hand. So why is the Mishnah Brura saying I can't use a spoon to do bar? I thought the spoon was okay. In fact, the Mishnah Brura himself says a spoon's okay. Look at source number 18. Okay, in source number 18, he writes lahafrid bikaf to separate with the spoon the machal avam and haroitev the mutter. It's mutter. So you have one Mishnah Brura says using the spoon to separate, it's fine. Like you said, an extension of the hand. And you have another Mishnah Brura that says you can't separate using the hand, the spoon. So which one is it? You got to pick a side here. So we're going to have two ways of understanding the chilik, the difference between these two cases of the Mishnah Brura. We're going to have the Rav Moshe, the Igot Moshe, and we're going to have the Orchot Shabbat. And we're going to see how we, in practice, understand this. Let's see let's start with the Igot Moshe. So, he writes as follows. Take a look at the bold part. And he writes at page 301, source 19. If the food is separated more easily, okay, by using a fork or spoon than by using one hand, which is what? That the cutlery helps the act of sorting. This should be considered sorting using a utensil. Right? Right? Kimo what? Kimo the basket and the plate. If the utensil you're using, including the spoon, including the fork, including the knife, if it's helping you select easier, it's making selection easier, says Rav Moshe, then that's considered a kli, and you're not allowed to use it. But when you're allowed to, but it's not, if it's in a case where it's not helping him select better, but rather he doesn't want to get dirty, or it's very far and it's hard for him to reach it with his hand, or it's something wet. He can't take it with his hand. So Rav Moshe makes this distinction. Rav Moshe says, how are you using that spoon? It's the same spoon. Sometimes that spoon would be usher to use in a case of bayer, and sometimes that spoon would be mutter to be in case of bayer. When you're using it to make it easier for you to select, and it makes it more of a precise selection, well, then that's bayer, and it's bayer bekeli, and that's usher. But I want to take out of the soup, I want to take my carrots, right? The big pieces of carrots, and I want to take them out, but it's hard for me to take it out with my hand. It's all wet, whatever it is. So I'm just using the spoon as an extension of my hand. That would be fine. That's Rav Moshe's distinction, so much so that the Rav Ribiat in his sefer over here just goes with this opinion. Throughout his sefer on the bar, he just goes with this opinion left and right. He makes this distinction very, very clear. It's the usage of the spoon that would say if it's a kli bar or not. The Orchot Shabbat has a different understanding of how to explain these two cases of Mishnah Berurah. One where it's okay to use a spoon, and one where it's not okay. And he explains as follows. The Orchot Shabbat is a good question. Who knows when it was written? It's the same time period. It would be right contemporary halachic sources. He usually brings down from Rav Shlomo Zalman. He's usually like always quoting Rav Shlomo Zalman, the Orchot Shabbat. But I'm not sure the exact time frame, the exact year. But he writes as follows. He writes, "V'nir de'ikar chiluku bezeh." When you take it, the food, the thick from the thin, with a spoon, what is it? It has a derech achila. Why? You're taking it in order to eat. Right now, I want to eat. Masha Einkain, when you take the fat off the milk, what is it? It's a different ma'aseh. Masha chashuv pnei atzmoi. Shehu oisemoy toy b'derech klal kechelik mithalich, a part of the production of milk and the fat. You understand his distinction is as follows. He says, when are you using the spoon? Rav Moshe was how you're using the spoon. His is when in the process are you using the spoon? If you're using the spoon in the production, well, that's not derech achila. Derech achila is when I'm doing it now to eat. If I'm separating the fat and the milk, and he says, even if now you want to use it to eat right away, since this usually is a production mode, the processing of the item, not the final step of eating, therefore, you would not be allowed to do it. Okay, so the two answers. So you have like this. The Mishnah Berurah that says, you can use a spoon to do bar. Mishnah Berurah then says you cannot use a spoon to do bar. Says the Igot Moshe, the distinction is of how you're using the spoon. If you're using the spoon in order to do a better selection, right, then that's also because then you're doing selection. But if you're using the spoon just as an extension of your hand, then that's fine. The Orchot Shabbat says it really depends in the process of using the spoon. Meaning, is the spoon being used to create a product, right? So then that's bar, that's a kli bar, that's for sure. That's not derech achila. But if it's used in order to eat, then that's considered derech achila, and the spoon would be okay. So, and source on page 302, now we're going to see Chazon Ovadia, see Chacham Ovadia's opinion, and let's see how we understand Chacham Ovadia's opinion according to the opinions we saw.
Like a liquid coolant, and it has, the beans and the thing on top. I took a fork, because I like liquidy chul, but I don't like, I like soupy chul, but I don't eat it like soup. I like to just take out.
Okay.
That's my thing.
So you're taking it up
I take
separately.
Out the beans and the barley and everything like this fork. And somebody told me, he said, well, what are you doing? It's borer. And he looked it up. He said, no, it's there.
Right. So you have two. Let's try to apply it to both ways. Orchot Shabbat, of course, it's derech achila. I'm eating it. This is my final step of eating. Right. So that's no problem. What about according to Rav Moshe? Are you actually trying to select better, or are you just using it as an extension of your hand?
He said using fork, that's no liquid.
Yeah, no
So you're taking the bean,
You want the liquid to go
So,
out now.
so I'm saying, according to Rav Moshe, it might be an issue. According to Rav Moshe, if you're really using this keli in order to select better, right? So then it's a klibara. According to the Orchot Shabbat, what? It's a derech chila. I'm eating it right now. We'll get into the slotted spoon in a minute, but that's it's a fork. It's a fork. How do you see the fork? So is it helping me better select? Then that's Rav Moshe, and that would be klibar, the keli bar. If you're saying the Orchot Shabbat, which is it's the final step on derech chila, and this is not used in the production. No one uses this in the production of chilling a fork like that. So therefore, it would be okay. Let's see the Chazon Avadi. Let's see what he holds. So that would be what we hold. So what does he say? Can you do it with a fork or a spoon for right away? He says, it's no Isser Bari B'Keli. Only when is an issue? When it's like a plate or a basket, when it stands to do Bayer. Right? Okay, so Chasson Avadi is saying that the spoon and the fork is just like a long arm. And it's derech chila. It's not like the plate and the basket. The plate and the basket could do some separating. You use it to separate stuff, right? But with a fork and spoon, it's used to eat. It's not used to separate. Okay. And then he writes even further. He says, Mishnah Brura that says Sha'as L'Bar B'Kav, right? I feel it's alter keeping Shuluk B'Kav. He says Ulam Ein Dvar of Muchachim. He says maybe it doesn't make maybe that's not true. Just because the Mishnah Brura said that that's the halacha, you can't use the spoon to take off the fat, but even if you're eating it right now, maybe that's not true. Maybe you could do it. Maybe you could do it, says Kamavaji. It's a spoon. Right. He's saying maybe the Mishnah Brura's psak is wrong. Maybe your psak is wrong, and maybe it's okay, right? Because you're using a spoon. So I wanted to take a look how Chamitzak Yitzhak puts it in the Yalkut Yosef, because it's going to help us understand a little bit more.
Like here, we have the loose tea.
Yeah.
And it floats on top. And I don't know, sometimes let's say sometimes use a spoon. I can't use the spoon on Shabbat to take out the loose tea. Right?
If you're taking out the tea, the tea leaves with some of the water,
with the water,
it's not going to be a problem.
But let's say without the water, then
so then you're doing you're separate. You don't want them there, right? You're not eating it right away. You're taking away the bad from the good.
But
right.
The only case would be.
So you have to take it out with some of the water, which you usually do anyway. You take out a leaf, it's going to come out with some of the water. Okay, so let's look at the lashon of the Yalkut Yosef outside of the Tzurba for a moment, and look what he says over here. He says about this: it's permissible to eat on Shabbat using a spoon or a fork, even if one uses it, separates one food from other items while eating. Even though it's forbidden to separate food from a picture using a sort of food, flatware is not considered tools. The spoon or the fork is simply an extension of the person's hand, and using them is an act of eating, not a separating. Then he writes, "Hilkach mutter livroy behem oichel mitoch b'soled le'ochol ne'alta." You eat it right away. Okay, so he's saying it has to be done to eat right away, which if you that's one of the three conditions, right? But perhaps we can say that the Yalkut Yosef really agrees with the Orchot Shabbat, which is what? What was the Orchot Shabbat? Orchot Shabbat distinction was that if I'm using it to eat, which is the final process, then that's not considered klibar. If I'm using it to spoon the milk and the fat, which is usually a process thing, then that is going to be a problem. The Yalkut Yosef, the Chamavaja, seems to be the same exact thing. He says, if I'm using it to eat, which is derech achila, which I'm eating it right now, so then that's fine. But if I am using it not for immediate usage, which is in the production period of the item, right, then that would be a problem. And the only question is, what's considered production period or not? Perhaps taking fat off the milk and I'm eating it right away, it's not considered production period. Or Shabbat wanted to say that is a production period. Chamavaji would say it's not, because people eat it that way. So it would really depend what's considered the production mode on this. But comes out, halacha l'maaseh for us is as follows. that a spoon and a fork is not considered a keli for bar, and you can use it while you're eating, as long as you're eating it right away. You're filling the three conditions. So in your case of the cholent, using the fork, according to the Shabbat, for sure is okay. Also, for sure, okay. Not an issue. You can use your fork to eat your children. Okay, and then and that way separating what you want from what you don't. Okay, now
Using the spoon to take out the chili, that because it's so
right, right. You're taking what you don't want.
because of the chili, it's often
Right. Yes. Okay. Very good. So now we come to another issue over here. They want to talk about the salt shaker. Okay, so what happens with the salt shaker? It's
Put the rice inside.
so some people put rice inside. Is there rice in this one? Okay, so what happens when you're taking out the rice, when you're pouring the salt, the rice stays in, right? So you're separating the rice from the salt. Which way is it? Is it the bad from the good or the good from the bad? Is the good from the bad or the bad from the good? Okay, if I have something here, right, and I'm pouring this out, and I'm leaving something inside my cup, what I have inside my cup is the good or the bad? What is it considered? Is it considered what I want in here? So it's actually a machloket. It's actually a machloket. So let's just take a look. It's not brought in here in the Tzurba, but we're going to do it outside. Okay, we're going to do it outside, and we'll start with a source in the 39 Melachot of Rabbi Ribiat. Here he says, here follows. Okay. Okay, so this, by the way, comes what's called the gray area. All right. So before we actually start this, let me go back over here for a second. This is the gray area when it comes to Bora. Okay, usually you have Bora, right? You take out something you don't want, right? So I took out something I don't want. Taking something I want, I take it out. What happens if I have, for example, a fly in my cup and I spill over the rim? Has he removed the fly from the glass, which is the waste from the food, or has he taken the glass of wine from the fly? All right? Did I take the glass of wine from the fly, which is now ochel yitov? So which one is it? Which way do you view it? Another question he writes over here, also gray area. Guy has a pit inside the peach that's cut in half. So by grasping the peach in one hand and the pit in the other, he pulls them apart. Is the pit being removed from the peach, which would be asur, which is the garbage from the food, or is the peach being removed from the pit? Which way is it? It depends. Okay, we'll talk about that. But again, how do you view it? Another question: a date is squeezed to extract the unwanted pit. Is that pit being removed from the date, or is the date being removed from the pit? Okay, so some gray areas. How do you view this removal? It's not a simple removal of one from the thing. It's two from each other. So he writes over here, from the Gaon Rabbeinu Zalman, right? He writes as follows: which when is it the garbage from the food from here? And especially when you're spilling out of the keli. So he writes that according to the Gaon Rabbeinu Zalman, Katav the Shenoifel Zvuv b'makshe, right? At the kois achipo hazvuv the v'chagavna choshev kevar oichel hayayin shebekos mitoich the waste. He's saying that when you pour out the fly from the cup, what you have here is considered your, right? What do you say? It's considered taking the oichel. This is what's considered. The milta the masha nishar b'hakeli biyado hu mashibir min hataruvos. Oh, what's left in your hand is what you separated from the mixture. So this is considered the part that you took. You spilled out the fly, but you took the keli. You took the wine from the fly. That's the way the Gaon Rabbeinu Zalman says this. But the Magen Avraham doesn't learn this way. The Magen Avraham, he writes, the Masha Shaifech Mina Keli chashav kibarim min teruva. So mash nishar b'keli should be adoi kinishar b'teruva. So he's saying the opposite. He's saying no. If you pulled out the fly, then that's what you took out. Okay. So you have a machloket, the Magen Avraham and the Zalman, of how you understand this. Let's take a look in the Yalkut Yosef now. In the Yalkut Yosef, he brings down a case like this. You see where I have it?
The fly. Why
Yeah.
Wine from the fly. Taking the fly out of the wine.
How do you view it? You're saying it that way. The other one says it the other way. That one says it the other way. Because I'm taking this.
You're pouring it out when the fly is coming out.
But what am I taking?
Wine.
I'm taking the wine. Or am I taking out the fly? It's two ways. That's why it's called the gray area. So in the Yalkut Yosef, he has a similar case. And we're going to see the way he paskins over here. Lemaisa, it's the din, it's a machlokas, and you have to go l'chumrah both ways. Okay, let's take a look over here. What he writes on page 351 of the Yalkut Yosef. Here's the case. It's a very nice case, and it's very often you can deal with this case. One has a container of lebanon or yogurt. Okay, he opens it, and there is watery liquid floating on the top of the yogurt solid. Okay, so I have my yogurt and I have this liquid on top. Most of us don't like the liquid. You want to get rid of it. So you want to shake it up. Okay. Some poskim ruled that it's forbidden to spill out this liquid on Shabbat, even if one wishes to eat the yogurt immediately, since it's considered an act of separating an undesired material from the mixture. I'm taking out, like you wanted to say, I'm pouring out the fly. If I'm taking this, I'm pouring out the liquid that I don't want. Other poskim disagree, viewing this as an act of one removing the food from the mixture. I'm taking my food away from this mixture. Okay? Since the portion that one left holding is considered the portion that was removed from the mixture. So then it's considered permitted. So this is the machlokas. This is exactly the same case.
This is both eatable. The fly you don't eat.
But I don't want it. Even if it's edible, it's still considered the unwanted portion, considered the waste. So this is the question. Can I pour it out or not? How do I view what I'm pouring out? If what I'm pouring out is what I took out, and that'll be usher. If what I'm pouring out is not considered, it's what I have in my hand is what I considered I took, so then it'll be mutter. The what? I'm getting rid of what I don't want.
Maybe that's the devil for you.
I'm getting rid of what I don't want. So you're saying if it's congealed very hard. Okay, you say very hard. So let's see. So next pre exactly what he says. He says in practice. So now what's the practice? That's the svar, right? Both ways. So what's the practice? As long as the yogurt solids are gelled into one piece, it's permitted to spill out the liquid from the top. Because like Rabbi Daniel says, there's no mixture of materials here. Nothing got mixed. Right? There are two different levels. There's liquid and there's that. There's no, remember, butter only comes into place if you have a tarubas, if you have a mixture. If there's no mixture, there's no mixture. So I pour it out. But if the yogurt itself is not well gelled, some of the yogurts are not a completely solid, and the liquid gets into it, right? And the liquid actually mixes into it. One must make sure to spill out some of the yogurt with the liquid.
Automatically gonna happen.
Okay, so if that happens, it happens. If there's only a little liquid mixed in the yogurt, and it is edible, right? As is, one may pour the yogurt into a cheesecloth and allow the water to drain through it. Since the yogurt is fit to eat, even without doing it, it's not considered an active borer. So apparently, if there's very little bit and you don't mind eating it, so then it would not be considered borer, and you can spill it out. So comes out when we come to this question, when it comes to this gray area of what is I doing when I'm spilling something out, it has to be viewed both ways. It has to be viewed that it's possible I'm spilling out is the unwanted, and that's usher, or maybe it's mutter, and you have to be the chumrah, so you have to always take it very carefully. You have to make sure that you're following all the rules. Here's one second, before you hold on one second. Here's another idea: taking pickles out of the can. Right? Some poskim say it's forbidden to spill out the liquid from a can of pickles. This is an active bar. Others rule the pickles are not considered to be part. So now you can say, oh, the pickles is what I'm keeping, but that's not the reason why it's to be maturate. Why are you allowed to do it? Because the pickles are big, right? And they're not considered to be mixed into the liquid. And since they're discernible, you can see them and they're separate. So therefore, it'd be permitted to spill it out. Right? All right, so if you drink pickle juice. So it's also edible, but do you want that right now? We have to go back to that. Okay, so the Maisa, you're allowed to pour out the liquid from the pickle can because why? Because the pickles are so distinct from that, it's not considered a true mixture.
Very practical case. Sometimes you have soup, right?
Right.
You served everybody soup. They finish their soup. They didn't finish it all the way. Let's say there's some soup and some. You have the liquid in the soup, and you have the like the
solid
beans or the whatever it is, vegetables, whatever it is. Now you want to go and throw it in the garbage, but you don't want to throw all the liquid in the garbage. So you do is you pour out some liquid, and ask my Rav about this, and he said, pour out the liquid, but don't do a perfect job. Like leave a little bit of liquid with and then you can pour the rest in the garbage. I mean, put the liquid into the sink, but not all the way, and the rest.
Right, because you still left the mixture.
How do you do in the can of tuna? Sometimes there's water.
Right.
What do you do with that?
Okay, so that's actually the next one. So he writes over here, it's permissible to spill out the oil from a can of sardines. And it's not necessary to spill out some of the sardines along with it. The oil is not considered to be mixed into the sardines. And therefore, this is not considered to be an active borer at all. So if the oil is just on top of the sardines and it's not a mush, one may spill out the oil even when there's not planned to eat the sardines until later that day. It's not borer at all. You can just spill it out. If this is a can of tuna or mashed sardines, on the other hand, then the oil is considered mixed with the fish because the oils get in everywhere. Right? The sardine, it's a piece of fish, right? And the oil is just sitting on top of it. And it's discernible, it's not considered borer. But the tuna, since it's already, all mashed up, so the oil gets into everything, and that's a true tarubos. And so,
in order to really get all out.
You're gonna tell me when you open. I don't open up someone's tuna cans, but you tell me.
Every week, you have to sometimes take the thing. You have to put the.
Is the oil
really
mixed with? So that means it's mixed in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's forbidden to spill out the oil from the can unless one spills some of the fish out with it. You have to take some of the food out with the oil.
Fish oil. Okay.
What do you mean fish juice? I'm not.
Oil is yellow, and you sometimes find black stuff coming out with the oil, but it's not solid form; it's liquid form. Is that considered? Do you understand my question?
No, I don't.
When you open the can of tuna, there's for sure oil. What color is oil? It's something that's translucent. You can see through it. And as you're pressing the top of the can, you're spilling the oil. You always see some black spots coming out, small pieces. Is it mamash a piece of the fish? No, but it could be fish.
So you're saying when it comes out, do you need actual fish or fish juice enough?
Yeah.
It has to be actual fish. It has to be actual fish. It has to be a part of the food that you eat, not just the fish juice. Okay.
All this with what we're saying, we're spilling out on this, or we're using the cover of the can, pressing and holding it. Like
So we also asked a very good question. So we're talking about spilling out. Can we use the lid of the can to help us spill it out?
And then it's gonna be a perfect time.
And what is it then?
15.
It's going to be a keli for bar. It's a kli bar. You just made a kli bar to select very well. Yeah. Okay. Let's say it's not a right to you can't use the lid.
Like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They used to do when grab the tuna fish upside down over here. And then what happened by default, all the juice, because tilted, the juice will fall out.
Yeah, you're learning the tricks of the trade.
Then the tuna will be staying on the top.
But you're holding the plate on an angle.
No, I'm putting it like this here. Put an angle like this?
Yeah, you're doing that on purpose.
Go ahead and grab it. Do it by itself.
Gravity.
I didn't do it.
It's tilted the plate.
Okay, maybe I'm not supposed to hold it.
Put it straight on the table. Why are you talking about it?
Okay.
So to your question, Rabbi Yosef, to your question, he says, yeah, he's not. He's placing it. He's not using it as a keli to do it on purpose. He's placing it, and it happens. Now here's your example of your case. Guy wants to pour the soup from the pot, right, or something, and he's holding the pan to the cover of the lid to the pot. Okay, yeah. So right, so pouring desired soup from a pot while holding back the noodles with the lid is forbidden. Right, this application, the combination of the pot and lid, strained noodle, is considered a keli somewhat similar to a strainer. Therefore, straining soup with the aid of a pot lid is forbidden. So same thing with the can. You can't use the lid. As you're using a kli, you made a kli bar. You won't be able to do that. Okay. Now going back, according to Rav Moshe understanding of how to using a keli, this is definitely you're using it to get a precise selection, right? According to Orchat Shabbat, also, even if you wanted to say if you want to say the can should be considered like a fork, which we're not going to say that, but even if you wanted to, this is in the production, right? This is the processing part of the food. This is not to eat it immediately. You're not doing that to eat it immediately. So, everybody, it's definitely going to be a keli, and it's going to be a problem of doing that. So, very good ha'ara on that. Let's move on now. Okay. So now the salt shaker. All this is because to understand the salt shaker, because the rice is staying in and that's coming out. So which way is it? Is it the oichel mitok v'sol? Is mitok oichel? So we said we have to be always l'chumra when it comes to such a case. So are you allowed to use a salt shaker with rice inside? So he brings over here, according to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, you shouldn't use a salt shaker with rice inside of it. Shouldn't. You shouldn't, because it might be considered bara. It's a kli bara. I'm leaving the rice inside. I'm holding the rice back and letting the salt out, right? But either way, it can be viewed either way. Either way, it's taking out or staying in can be considered the salt. You're not allowed to do it, right? We saw that the halacha is machloked. You have to go both ways. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So look right now. So he wants to say the Orchat Shabbat that there is an idea that if you use something, not just a fork or spoon, but any type of instrument that's used for an immediate use, right? So read it. The keli hamiyuchad livrar letzarch, for right away. Right? What was the whole reason that you're allowed to use the fork and the spoon? We said it's the extension of the hand, and it's going to be used as the eating for immediate, right? That's what Chamaladji said. That was that yesterday. We saw that. So says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, perhaps you want to be lenient, you can say any keli that is used for immediate, right? And it does something like selecting, it should be okay, because it's done for immediate, for miyad, and it should be considered okay. And therefore, he pouring tea essence through the filter. This should be permitted if you go with this idea. Removing a tea bag from the cup, even though the drops of tea essence drip from the bag. Just like sorting by hand is permitted because it's the way of eating. According to this is all considered the way of eating. This is the way it's done. Right before you eat, you use this type of filter, whatever it is, to eat it. Maybe it should be permissible. So if that's the case, says the Shmiyat Shabbat Kilchata, he says, then you know what? Then pouring from a salt shaker should also be okay, because it's keli that, yes, it is separating, but it's done for immediate use, and immediate use should be okay. In the end of the day, Chacham Ovadia did not go with this opinion, and the Chazan Ovadia, he writes that the reason why the salt shaker is not a problem, it's because he says it's not a keli of borer at all. It's not a keli borer at all. What's the reason you're using a salt shaker? It's a flow meter, okay? I don't want a lot of it to come out. So I use a salt shaker, so it limits the amount that comes out. So it's not a kli borer. It's not used to hold something back. Okay, it's being held back, whatever, but it's not what it's used for. That's not your attention. That's not how it's used. It's not a problem at all. So he doesn't. So Chumvadi doesn't go with the same opinion, saying, "Oh, if it's a keli that's to be used immediately, then it's going to be okay." He doesn't use that opinion. He has to give another opinion. So he's going to have to explain all these cases of the tea bag and everything else with different explanations of why they would be mutter. They all be mutter, but why they would be mutter would be different for a different reason, and we'll get to them at the Shem next week. Now we come into another classic example over here. Rami, you brought this up, which was the slotted spoon. Okay. Okay, so what's a slotted spoon? It's a spoon that has holes in it. Okay, kafkir. All right. So more like the ones they sometimes use in salads, right? You have a lot of salad dressing. So I don't want to pick up all the dressing. So I have a spoon that has holes in them. So I pick up the salad and the liquid stays. Can I use this spoon, or is it considered a keli of bora? Is it considered a kli bora, or is it like a spoon? And that would be okay. So let's see. The Chot Shabbat, he says you should not use page 303. He says you should not use a slotted spoon for removing salad, since the spoon is a utensil used for sorting. It's not considered. It's not considered biyad. It's not considered using your hand, says the Chot Shabbat. It's considered a keli, and you can't do it. Right? It's a sorting keli. The Or L'Tzion was asked this question also. If you can use a slotted spoon, and he answered as follows on page 304. He says, Yesh lahater. He says it should be mutter. And even though the soup drips out, provided one plans to eat it immediately. Okay, maybe he's going with the Chot Shabbat's idea that you can use any keli that does bor as long as you're eating it immediately. But let's see in the notes what he writes in the Aras why he's permitting this. He writes, although it should be forbidden rabbinic level, right? Since it's like a basket or a plate or any other keli that you're not allowed to use for bar. But perhaps you have a few opinions you can put together. We didn't see all these opinions yet. But number one, there is an opinion that bar does not apply to liquids. So it's a liquid here I'm dealing with, so not a big problem. And even according to the opinion that bar does apply to liquids, it should only be like a basket and a plate, which is also derabbanan, since it's not a utensil designated specifically for sorting. The same is true that a slotted ladle is not designed only for sorting, and therefore it's permitted here. Why? Because it's his intent was not to strain, right? He's not doing it to separate, but rather he's just doing it, and it's this is derabbanan, and it's let's take a look at the lashon of the Yalkut Joseph. You'll see it clear on page 348. Over here, he writes, since the person wishes only to remove some food from the pot, has no intentions of performing an act of bar, it's permitted, even though it's of sick resha, that the broth will be separated. This is a case of sick resha of performing an act normally forbidden by our sages, right? This is the Rabbanon. When one has no intention and he doesn't care for it, and therefore it would be mutter to use the slotted spoon to take your salad or take something out of the soup. Okay? But then he writes, what? Right. Yesh lachmer, and it's better, and you get a special bracha if you hold back and you don't use the slotted spoon. Okay? So when it comes to the slotted spoon, Rami, better not to use it. But if you a fork and a spoon is considered an extension of the hand when it comes to normal eating. When it comes to normal eating, right? Yeah, you can do that. Well, in the soup, first of all, it's liquid. B, matzo ball and big vegetables are discernible, right? That you can see them, so it's not a true mixture. So you'll be permitted to do that.
Is that also yesh lachmir or
with the fork to come inside and take it out? If they're big pieces, you have no problem. You can take them out.
I want to go into the soup. There's a lot of ingredients in there. I like the carrot,
right?
But I don't like the potato.
I'm
gonna pour for 1 second. After I'm done taking from the pot, I'm gonna pour the soup into my bowl. So meaning I'm not trying to get rid of the soup. which that's what the spoon does. It's just I'm trying to aim. It's almost like
you're going in to get an item.
I'm going to get an item.
Okay.
What's spilling out of the spoon is the soup. I eventually want.
Right. So this might not even fall into the category of bora at all.
Right.
Because you're just trying to get to what you're trying to get. Okay. It's not considered bora. It's you're just moving to the side what you want, what you don't want in order to get to what you want. The what? So this is called siluk. What you're talking about is called siluk. We're moving to gain access to the desired item. I'm moving things to the side to get what I want, which would be mutter. What are you doing? What's the case? I have soup, and I want to put vegetables here and meat over here. And what am I doing it for? Everyone's going to eat it? And you're going to eat them. So what's the problem? They're miyad. You're eating them right away. Okay, fine. All right. Let's now get into ochel mitoch pisolet and sorting two types of food. Okay, so the first thing is, and I think of Yosef, you brought this up before, where you're like saying they're both edible, right? So if they're both edible, is there any waste there, right? So we saw that the Gemara said it very clearly. The Gemara said, Hayu lefanav mine oichlin. He had in front of him types of food. Bar be'oichel, bar meniach, v'lo yivra be'imber, chayiv chatat. So there it said specifically, he had in front of him types of food. So one food to the other food could be considered desired to undesired, and you can have bora there. Okay? So in your case, what you're saying, I was eating both, so it's not a problem. The problem will be if I'm separating and one of them I don't want to eat.
You don't like potatoes.
That's going to be a problem. Okay? Now, the truth is, not everyone holds like that. Okay? We're going to see in a minute a Rambam that seems to be saying when you're dealing with two foods, you can separate it any way you want. Okay? So let's take a look first at the Tosfot. The Tosfot, and this is the way we paskin, he brings some Rabbeinu Chananu. The borer, you can have borer. But you take what you want from what you don't want. That one you don't want is considered the waste. That he wants. So Tosa brings Rabbeinu Chananel, brings Yerushalmi that one food from the other food, desired from undesired, is a case of bar. The Rambam, look at the lashon on the Rambam on page 306 and source 28. The Rambam's lashon, what's what he says? Hayulafanav, shnei mine eichlin, that are mixed. Bayer echad me'echad umeniach lechol miyad. You separate one from the other. He doesn't say separate which one from which. He just says separate one from the other to eat it right away. V'im birer, right? But if he leaves it for later, right, then he's going to be chayav. So what's the Rambam? The Rambam says I have two foods. I can separate it any way I want. I don't have to take what I want from what I don't want when it comes to two foods. I can separate it any way I want. Now, the Shulchan Aruch says verbatim the Rambam, right? He says you have two mini oichlim that are mixed up. Bayer echad me'echad, right? The oichel miyad, eat right away. What does the Ramah do? He adds the word hasheni. Hasheni kidei le'ochel miyad. He changed the case. The Ramah changed the case. The Shulchan Aruch said it like the Rambam. I have two foods. I can separate one food from the other food in order to eat it right away, which means I can separate any way I want. As long as I eat it right away, eat one of them right away. Eat one of them right away.
One of them?
Yeah, one of them right away.
That's Shulchan Aruch.
What? That's Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah.
That's the Rambam at Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah comes and says you have to take it in a way. You take the one you want to eat right away. And he says you have to take the one that you want to eat right away. Not just to separate and eat one of them right away, but rather take the one you want and eat that right away. And that's brought down the Bir Halacha. He writes, now, the language of Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam, which copies from the Rambam, the straightforward meaning is that one may place down for others or himself one for the other. Right? The Ramah adds the word the second type in order and changes the meaning of Shulchan Aruch and Rambam to teach that the food that one does not want now is like waste, and one must remove food that he wants, as the Tzurba Hadeshin writes. It is unclear whether the view of the Rambam is also in accordance with the Ramah. Says the Bir Halacha. The Rambam may not be like the Ramah. And the Sefer Mamar Mordechai quotes Rabbi David Arama, who writes in his commentary on the Rambam that with two types of food, it's permitted to take one from the other, even the one you don't want. As you only prohibit this when one sorts complete waste from food. And this is not the case here, as there are two types of food. In this case, any sorting for immediate consumption is permitted, right? Any sorting when it's two foods is permitted. However, in practice, says the Bir Halacha, we should follow the Ramah, Tzurba Hadeshin, the Ramah, whose source is the words of the Rosh. So you have here Machloket Rishonim, Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah of if I have two foods, do I have to separate the desired from the undesired, or can I separate it either way? Interestingly enough, the Kaf HaChaim and Chacham Ovadia, and it's brought down the Yalkut Yosef, and they all say we should be machmer like this Ramah. Machmer is Tzurba Hadeshin, this Rosh, and you must take the desired from the undesired. You can't just separate it any way you want. And the Rav Shlomo Amar, he wants to say in this long arichas over here in source 31 on page 307, he says, I don't know why everyone's posketing this way. They're all following the Ramah on this. Many holy Rebbeim hold this is not so, according to the Rambam. And the second type is not considered a waste. Therefore, one may even remove the type that one does not want immediately, provided he consumes one of them immediately. Right? Like the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch says, or Shlomo Amar, that should be the din. And he writes further, one should question the words of Chacham Ovadia. He writes, question of Chacham Ovadia, why is he saying it's Aser? And Chacham Ovadia said he's Chayav, which means it could be an Issa D'Oraita, Chayav Chatat. He says, but that's not the case. It's not the way the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch learn. And his lashon is, he shouldn't have used a sharp knife, the Skina Charifa. The Chacham Ovadia used a sharp knife by saying that it's Aser to separate one food from the other when they're two foods. But in practice, right, he ends up with the same thing. So the Maisa Toil in the end, you should be machmer, and you should separate the desired from the undesired. So comes out, right? Just to review, it's a Machloket Rishonim, Tosfot, Rabbeinu Chananel versus the Rambam. Of when it comes to two foods, do I have to separate the desired from the undesired? The Rambam, the Pashtus means you can separate one either way, and it's fine. In fact, we find this on Yom Tov, by the way. When you have to do borer on Yom Tov, when it's permissible to do borer, you have to do borer in the method that's least effort, right? The most easiest way, which sometimes can mean taking out the non, right? So this concept exists. But the Rambam says when it comes to foods, you can always do that either way, and it's not a problem. Shulchan Aruch goes with the Rambam, but the Ramah goes with the Rebbeinu Chananel, with the Tosfot, with Tzurba Hadeshin, with the Rosh. They all say that you should be careful. And Chacham Ovadia says also you should be careful, and you should consider it a true borer, and you have to take the one you desire from the undesired. Just to read the lashon of the Yalkut Yosef over here, and he writes as follows. Okay, the one he wishes to eat now assumes the halachic status of food, while the other one that he doesn't want right now considered the status of the undesired. Therefore, on Shabbat, he may pick the food he wishes to eat from the mixture if he plans to eat it immediately. He may not separate the food if he does not wish from the mixture, since some poskim rule that this would be a capital offense and chayav hatat. Okay,
daughter likes pasta,
Yeah,
son likes meat.
yeah.
And two, when it's something like that, one takes it off. That's considered to be boil, as we said.
One's eating this, one's eating that,
One is eating one, and he's like leftover. That's not for me.
and someone else is eating it.
Yeah.
Sure, not a problem at all.
What if the second person would not be eating it?
So then you can't do it. Then it's going to be boring. He has to take. Right, but we say we have to be machmer for it. We have to be machmer. But why does you have to be machmer? You have to take it serious. It might be chayim hadat.
In regards to that, when it's completely done, meaning to say it's separating pasta from the pasta part from the meat, or if I leave a little bit of the meat with the pasta, that's considered to be not boer.
So
Do I have to, in order to be boer, I have to do strictly only pasta and only meat on this side. But if I mix it a little bit pasta with the meat,
I'm leaving some of the ochel
yeah.
with that. So that's
leaving
not
some
that.
of the
So
meat
that's
with the
not
pasta.
considered bar, right?
I'm just saying in regards to, let's say you got a little hair in the food, right? If I want to take out the hair, if I take it out with the food, is that considered to be boer, or only if I take out the hair by itself?
Only take out the hair by
Because
itself.
that's common, it happens.
Only if you take out the hair by itself.
So if I take something
out with the food,
it,
yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Tea, if I have something inside the tea, I want to take out the tea, whatever item
Yeah.
that's in there with
With
water,
the
it's
water,
fine.
right, right. That's what we say. Yes, that's what Chaladi would say about tea bag. Correct. Okay.
Clarifying.
Yeah, very good. All right. So now we have 5 minutes, so we'll try to go through this last part, which is really borer with one type of food. We're on page 309. Okay. Can you have borer with one type of food? What does this mean? The guy has, for example, he has fish, and he has different types of fish on a board. He has fish inside a pot, different types of fish. He has carp, sea bass, and dorado, brazini, whatever you have there. There are all these different types of fish. He has all together. Can he take one from the other? So the real question is, how do you define a mixture? Okay, how do you define a mixture? What's considered tarubis? Is it pulled fish and it's not a mixture? Or different types of fish is considered a mixture? So says the Tzurba tradition, he writes that the same fish is not considered bar. But if it's two types of fish, it is considered a mixture, and it'll be an issue of bar over there. Says the Ramah the same thing, that large pieces and small pieces is not considered bar. So if I have pieces of carp and I made some of them very big and some of them very small, and I'm going for one or the other, that's not considered a mixture. The Taz wants to say maybe that is a mixture. Even sizes might be a mixture. Right? That's the Taz on 34. He says maybe size is also a mixture.
What's good.
Right? Maybe that's considered a mixture, and you have to take what you want. The Mishnah Berurah says the Taz is too machmer, right? We don't go this way. But when it comes to roasted and boiled, they're considered two different. Meat and chicken is considered different. Maybe somebody who likes one type of chicken part, the dark over the white, maybe if there's a mixture there, maybe for him, it would be a mixture because he's very specific.
No problem.
Right, take out what he wants. You can't remove what you don't want. Right. I'm just saying that it would be considered a mixture that you would have an issue of butter. You have to do it the right way. Just let's go through a couple of cases here in the we have 3 minutes in the laws of Shabbat, and he gives some definitions of a mixture. Okay, here he starts. Okay, two types: fish, chicken. Right, that's for sure a mixture. What happened if I have baked fish and fried fish, roasted meat, boiled meat? They're also considered mixtures. You would have to take what you want from what you don't want. Well, chicken, we already spoke about. Dark and white might be considered, especially if someone really likes the different parts. Fruits. Is a different color fruits considered a mixture? If I have green apples and red apples in a bowl, is that considered a mixture? Some say it's only by taste. If they taste different, usually green and red taste different, so then it would be considered a mixture, and you have to do the bar with the conditions. Sizes, we already talked about sizes. Sizes is not a problem, right? As long as it's the same min. If one has large and small pieces of cake, you can separate them. Now he writes, though, in regard to items of clothing, Even though some are large and some are small, and it's difficult to differentiate one from another, the pile is considered a mixture and subject to halachot of borer. So what he's saying, if you have a bunch of t-shirts, right? And you have small and large t-shirts in there, even though they're all t-shirts, it's going to be bar. You have to take what you want from what you don't want. Okay, that's what he says over there. Color. He says here, if you're particular about a color, right? It's all the same piece, but they have different colors. If you are particular about colors, then it's going to be considered a mixture. Quality, fresh and spoiled. All right. For instance, one has a grape cluster that has some spoiled and some fresh grapes. Guests came and want to take out the cluster of grapes. What can I do? If one will pick out the spoiled grapes, right, then it's going to transgress a prohibition. You have to what? You pick out the fresh grapes from the cluster and leave the spoiled ones behind. It's considered a mixture. Fresh and spoiled is considered a mixture. So no cluster. You're going to take out the pieces. You say, I want you to skip a step. Okay? Easier to eat. Okay, here's the grapes ready to go. Okay, and then we'll end up with this last idea. Can you do birkat ilanot on Shabbat? Right, birkat ilanot. Apparently, there's some spiritual separating of the and the tzartzos, the sparks over there. Yeah. So when I make the bracha, so can I do it? So we say spiritual is mutar. It's okay. But we're talking halacha here. Okay.